So hello everyone and welcome to another great webinar brought to you by leaders in cloud rendering GridMarkets. We've got a really inspirational guest for you this evening or morning, depending on where you are based. Now a few introductions. I'm Charlie Watson, Head of PR and Communications at VFX and Animation Studio in London, Jellyfish Pictures. So it is the evening for me and I have the pleasure to be moderating this session today. I'll be talking to founder and head of VFX at Alps VFX, Filippo Robino. Filippo has worked in some of the biggest modern day blockbusters, including Aquaman, Spider-Man, Far From Home, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, and Avengers Age of Ultron. Yeah, and that's just the tip of the iceberg for his credit list. Filippo's stories want to focus and seeing his dreams come through to fruition. Before we hear from Filippo, however, we are going to have GridMarkets co-founder, and the reason we are all here today, Mark Ross, to take us through who GridMarkets are and why they are so great. And then following Mark, we have another super special guest, Ben Hill. Ben joins us from cloud security experts Oracle, and Ben is the global director for Oracle Startups. So first of all, Mark, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Ross. I'm going to talk a little bit about GridMarkets today, very briefly. The company is focused on providing animation rendering and visual simulations, also molecular simulations. We have some work that we do in the pharmaceutical side. We have over 4,000 customers in 90 countries. We have major partnerships with 3D software companies like SideFX, Maxon, Pixar, and others. And then we have some significant and strategic cloud partnerships with the likes of Oracle and Google and others. And as Charlie mentioned, Ben Hill from Oracle will be here talking about Oracle security in just a few minutes. We're located all around the world, US, Europe, Asia, Australia, and that allows us to provide a follow the sun support approach, which is one of the big advantages that we offer. This is our pipeline. As you can see, we support Houdini, 3ds Max, Blender, Cinema 4D, Maya, and then the corresponding renders that go along with it. It's our model is a pay-as-you-go model. So you pay only for what you use. Then you can scale up and down in both machine count and license count. We provide all that for you very seamlessly. You just simply specify how many machines you want, and we acquire the appropriate number of licenses and machines to satisfy that request. I mentioned that we're located around the world, and the team that we have that is located around the world that provides our support has come from some major studios. So they know your pain. They know what it's like to have a very complex and time-pressing submission and how to get that across the finish line. So we provide, an excellent support team and on a 24/7 basis. Here's how it works very briefly. If you want to get started, there's a sign-up page on gridmarkets.com sign up. So you create an account, very brief form, fill in a few things. Then you download Envoy. Envoy is the tool that allows you to upload and download your files to us. And you can choose the Envoy for whatever your operating system is. And once you download Envoy, it includes the plugins that correspond to whatever 3D software you prefer. So for example, if you're using Houdini, you would install the Houdini plugin. Once you do that, point Envoy to your project files, then Envoy will upload those files to you. As you can see here, we can upload files from either a local project directory or from whatever your favorite data store is, S3, etc., Zora, and so on. Once that submission goes up, then the render that you chose, either RenderMan, V-Ray, Redshift, or whatever it might be, is activated and your project starts to render. Again, you would, at this point, specify how many machines you want to use, and those machines would be allocated to your submission, and this is all done behind the scenes. Once you have done the submission, you get this real-time dashboard, which shows what projects you have submitted to us and what their state of processing is. And you can also use this to interrogate the job, to find out details about the log, and everything you would want to control your submissions is on this dashboard. Once the frames are completing, they start to download, so you don't have to wait for all the frames to be completed. Rather, as each frame is completed, then it begins to download to the directory that you have designated. We're offering a free trial. You can go to gridmarkets.com, sign up to get the free trial, and also use this promo code at the bottom, 2021 July 7th webinar, to get a 15% discount. If you're a new user, you'll get a 15% discount on whatever credits you buy after signing up. And if you're an existing user, when you buy the credits, just use that discount code and you'll get the discount for that as well. Back to you, Charlie.
So now we have Ben roaring up in his Lamborghini to tell us about Oracle. Ben, please take it away.
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you, Mark. It's always great to be here talking about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and our tireless dedication to security. But I understand this is simply a primer before Alps VFX's exciting content, so I'll make it as quick as possible. Again, my name is Benjamin Hill. I'm Global Director in the Oracle for Startups program, specializing in cloud architecture and security. Essentially, we're an accelerated program that provides resources to entrepreneurs to help them launch their successful business. So when Oracle went about launching our Generation 2 cloud offering, our approach to security was deliberate and direct. We wanted to ensure it was architected in, automated, always on, and best of all, free. So how do we go about doing this? Well, let's go through some of the high points. More security by default. Now, what does that mean? Well, firstly, we designed for isolation. We've taken the hypervisor and put it on the network layer. What on earth does that mean? Well, in short, this approach separates customer traffic, which provides better security and performance. And as an added bonus, it reduces risk of hypervisor-based attacks. Also, OCI has what's called separation of duties, which means Oracle administrators have no access to customers' memory space. And as it relates to your data and associated storage services, we have full encryption at rest and in motion, as well as integrated backup for business continuity and disaster recovery best practices. So moving on, let's chat a little bit about our auto detection and remediation capabilities, specifically Oracle Cloud Guard, security and vulnerability scanning services, So Oracle Cloud Guard, known as OCG, provides comprehensive end-to-end monitoring for cloud environments. It's continuously collecting and analyzing data and service configurations, audit logs, and other information and reporting its findings as problems based on out-of-the-box security recipes or custom security recipes created by the specific administrator. And to complement OCG, we have Oracle's vulnerability scanning service, which routinely checks hosts for potential vulnerabilities and generates detailed reports with metrics about potential weak points. And again, the majority of our security services, especially as it relates to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, are free. So multi-factor authentication for user access, OCI Vault to store things like SSH keys, and we're open to third-party tools. So you can federate your IAM policies with your centralized identity provider, as well as SIEM systems like Splunk and Logarithm. So that is it. Like I said, it'd be really quick. I'm going to be passing it back to you now, Charlie, to move on to the exciting stuff.
Thank you. Well, I don't think it was any less exciting, but certainly very important for the VFX industry to be able to do the amazing stuff they do. So thank you very much, Ben, for joining us today.
Yeah.
But now, yes, the man of the hour, Filippo. So Filippo is going to be talking about Alps VFX. Hi, Filippo.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
How are you doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good. Another warm day here in Italy, so the sun is shining, so it's great. Actually, it was a bit raining today, but yeah, whatever. It's summertime. Everybody loves summer. So.
Well, and that's going to be one of the topics we touch on. It's the fact you are in Italy, having worked all over the globe. So to give attendees a little bit of background on Alps VFX, Filippo founded it in 2019. It's an Italian visual effects studio based in Turin, and they provide high quality VFX services to the global markets. Their team bring international experience from renowned VFX studios. And co-founder Filippo, as I ran off some of those incredible credits earlier. Filippo, before we get started and really into our conversation, do you want to share some of your work with our attendees?
Sure. Let me just share the screen.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Filippo. That was just amazing. And incredible music as well, which had been part of the discussion, tapping my toe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we start talking about Alps VFX and your newest venture, I mean, as everyone saw, you've done some amazing work, and you started off in Turin and then have now travelled around the world. Can you give us a brief overview of your journey to those big high-end blockbusters?
Yeah, so basically, when I finished the university, I think every artist, I had to decide if to open a new studio without knowing actually how to work properly, or to go and try to work on those major feature films and learn how to work. So me and my current business partner, that we had this little project, we decided, okay, after university, let's try to go and try to reach high level in terms of career, and to work in those big studios and see how the best are dealing with those, how they get to done those shows and so on. So we started really simple, like starting from small studios here in Italy, and then we work all the way up to myself, for example, to Weta, my business partner, to other places like the Mill, New York, or ILP in Sweden, and so on. And we jumped from one company to another one, and basically just trying, to learn everything from those company, and to try to do our best work at all time, and to get basically the job done in every place that we went to. So my first big gig basically was in Munich, in Trickster. It's basically where I learned most of my skills, thanks to Trickster, which is an amazing company, and they really did and are still doing great work. And then from there, I decided to move on to Scanline, because that was also a huge company that I really wanted to go to and experience, to try their technology, because they're very, very well known, especially in the fixed department, that they are the best of doing water and huge simulation, thanks to their pipeline and workflow with Flowline. And then after that, with my current wife, since she's also in the industry and she also here with me at the moment in Alps, we decided to move on the other side of the world and to try experience some other companies such Ilora, the Method, and then Weta. And also to see the other side of the world, basically. Yeah. Because the great thing about our industry is that it gives you the possibility, if you really want to literally travel wherever you want. There is basically no limits in where you can go and work, if you're good, of course, at what you're doing, and so on. And it was a long journey, and after we reached me and Alessio, my business partner, high positions in the various company, and we have a very robust showreel, we decided to move forward with our regional project and to come back and to build our company.
Wow, that's amazing. So how long had that been? How long did that process take? You set out the ideas after university?
Well, we started with this idea, I think it was around 2012, 2013. So it took us approximately 7 years to reach that. But of course, it didn't happen just in 2019, because it's not that we decided from one day to another one to open, but we had a long planning before that. So that's why also I got to know GridMarkets and Mark Ross in particular, because we started to work on the strategy of the company, on the business plan, and what to do, basically 1 year and a half before opening it. Because we didn't want to we want to be prepared for it. And there are so many things that you need to count for a company. It's just insane.
And when you and your business partner, you're successful in in your respective studios. You'd gone all over the world, worked at some of the biggest studios, Weta, Scanline. What was it in that moment of time? What was it that made you think, actually, no, now I'm ready. Now let's go back to Turin?
Well, the thing that it made us basically do the flip, like to stop basically and to move on, was a very simple thing. To see all the talent that was scattered around the world, especially Italian artists that we became friends with, of course, because you go in a different country, you always yours tries to gather with your own country mates, so to say. So you hang out and so on, you talk, and always there was this will from everybody, like to say, if there was the possibility to go back one day in Italy, in a good studios with high level of work, that they do work as they are doing it here in Weta or in other studios. I would be so happy to return so I can be with my family, be with my mother, my father, and so on, and still hang out with them, but still also do the work that I'm good at and that I love to do. Because I think it's for everybody. Your own country is still your own country, so you always have, even though maybe it's not the best country, still your own, it's still where you grew up. Exactly. It's still the one that you're attached to. So there is always this will of coming back. And we realized that there was such a huge treasure for us out there, because in this industry, let's say the resources, the main resource are actually the artists, are not because the computer, yes, of course, are a great resource, but they're constantly changing and they're getting just more powerful. So it's just a matter of purchasing hardware and system. But artists, you need to have need to have a good education. They need to have a huge, amazing skills, good technical and very strong technical side, but also at the same time an artistical side, good attitude at work, to be organized, and to find all of that in a person, it's really hard. It's really hard. And if we just give them the possibility to come back, they will come, and we will have our door open for them. And not just the Italian one, of course, because currently we are employing like a lot of artists from Germany, from Australia, from all around the world. So it's not only Italian company, absolutely. It's just, it's a plus.
So, I mean, you've experienced extreme growth in the last 2 years, despite all the challenges that studios have been facing. But what did it look like when you first started 2 years ago? How many of you were there? What was the
when we started, the plan was, let's take it easy. Let's do small steps. So we keep everything under control. So our growth rate was set to be like 10 people, maybe in a 2 years lifespan. And so we could really monitor the growth of the technology side and so on. So we started with smaller projects, like commercial projects, projects from other vendors, like a few shots here, a few shots there, and all simple, let's say simple stuff that would give us the time to develop like a pipeline and so on. But then we got in our hand, not by luck, but we got to our hand like a huge project. There is this dumping movie that they wanted to give it to us. And we took it, of course, and that was more than 720 shots, overall.
That's
so that was basically an H-bomb in our hand, and we had to survive. So we went. So our business plan was completely, I wouldn't say throw it in the bin, but had to completely be rewritten in a very short time. And most of the stuff was actually not rewritten; it was just played along. But at least we have a direction. We had a plan for a smaller scale, let's say, office and company, but we just had to upscale it along the way. And instead of being like 10 artists after 3 years, we reached up, I think, 56 or 57 artists, something like this, at the peak last month. And since we were also the main vendor of this big production, those were just the artists that we had in-house in 2 different offices, because also we had to rent another office to expand. But overall, we gave work for around 250 people.
Wow.
For this project. So we actually did a head-to-end of course 250 people, but we still had to handle the work of the output of 250 people because of the outsourcing vendor that we used and so on. We had to check the work, of course, and to use it because most of it was just prep work.
Yeah. I mean, hiring that amount of crew is incredibly challenging and quite daunting for any studio, none less than a new one. I mean, how did you finding the talent?
Well, the recruiting was done mostly personally by me and Alessio, my business partner, especially because since the studio literally went kaboom in such a short notice, we had to basically separate a bit the work. So he has a more 2D background since he is a compositor, and I have a more 3D background since I'm a FX artist and so on. So we decided not to split the things, but to be more focused on the 2 different departments, so we can manage it better. And basically, we were just recruiting all people that we used to work with in the past, or actually, a lot of people actually came to us. They presented to us their showreel and we hired them. Or simply we formed them from the beginning, because when we started immediately a collaboration with the local school here in Turin, in town.
Yes. Yeah.
That they are providing good talent because they are good schools, and we immediately grabbed the best of them as soon as they were at school. I said, okay, come with us. We will give you now a good start. And then they started literally on this, not just on this movie, because also we had other things going on, but we literally throw them into flames, if you know what I mean. I say, okay, here you go. Now you do big visual effects. So of course we taught them everything, and we tutored them, and we explained them everything. But it was intense. It was a very intense experience. But we literally create a very good and very efficient team in literally no time, and that was incredible. Actually, the team that we had at the end of the movie was really amazing. They were able to do crazy things. And another thing that kind of played in our favor was the COVID, because a lot of people kind of tried to return home from abroad during the COVID period, because being abroad in other country was harder because you were alone, isolated in the house. So a lot of people started coming back in Italy, and also we managed to get to hire some of those people that they were coming back from either UK or other parts, and to hire them basically.
It's fantastic. I mean, however, having shot up so quickly, were there any growing pains? What were those technical challenges, or did you have to start thinking about how you're going to have to burst into the cloud, using the cloud to expand your studio, going investing more in on-prem? What was your
looking at other studio with our experience, we saw that the rendering power in every studio that we went, no matter which scale the studio was, from the smallest to the biggest, was never enough. There was no way to. There were always downtime in which I was finding myself in which I couldn't render, maybe even for weeks in some studios, my stuff, my work. Because the farm was completely slammed because of the amount of show they were running, and also the quality that all the show nowadays they require. And even though the render engine are getting better, still never enough. So we decided, since we were starting from scratch, to don't invest in a huge, again, a huge render farm that it would just become like unmanageable and it's never going to be enough, but to already look at the studio in a cloud version.
Mm.
But rapidly, especially talking with other studio and other people that have experience with the cloud, we saw that was the solution of the cloud is great, but it's not. It doesn't cover it all. So you cannot you cannot have a studio completely on the cloud because the lines, the internet lines, and other things, there are always some problems. So you need to have a bit of to be a bit self efficient in case there is a downtime on the lines or there are some problems. So what we went for, it was more a hybrid approach in which we had the workstation locally here, configured in a certain way, and then just submit it to the cloud, the heavier stuff, the long rendering and so on, the one that will basically stop the facility from working when you have too much to render your place. So in that way, we will never not stuck with renders basically on the farm, and we were not having the problem of not be able to continue our work because we couldn't check the artist's work that we were producing that day because they couldn't render it. So basically, which it worked actually quite well in my opinion. Like we were able to render everything in time, in great quality, and without interruption. And of course, since the entire infrastructure was built along the way, there were problems. It was not all perfect, but overall, I think it was a great success.
So we've spoken quite a lot about the projects that help grow the company. I think it's time for some of our attendees to get to watch some of these. Do you have the Alps VFX reel to?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This is part of the work that we accumulated when we started the company and so on. Unfortunately, I cannot share yet that project, the big one, because it's still not released yet, the movie, but it will be at a certain point. Let me share again.
Impressive.
That's brilliant. Thank you. It's such a short amount of time, and it's just incredible. I mean, let's just list some of those. So you've got commercials for Lamborghini, Stephen King drama, The Stand. I mean, it's just amazing, really good, and it is all over the world. It's not just Italian productions. I mean, how are you working alongside other studios? How are those?
Yes,
contacts?
basically. Yeah, so also another thing that I forgot to mention is that in our business plan originally, and that's what we are actually currently doing, is that as I mentioned, we gave work for more than 250 people for this production, not just for this project, also for other projects. So what we do, we try not to basically create a huge insane studio and gather all the artists of everywhere. But if we see that our office is not big enough or so on, if we can, we try to share as much as possible with other studios, both artists or work, so they also can grow with us and they can help us grow. Because sometimes we saw that, especially in certain facility, if you grow too much, if you're too big, your efficiency actually drops sometimes because for many reasons. So there is, we think, a sweet spot where you can reach in terms of dimension for a company. And then after that, it's probably best to just share the work with other smaller studios. So you can also grow with them. And also it's better for the artists. So they are not just in one big, huge environment, but they are in smaller environments. So they feel also more at home. It's a more human, more friendly environment. And so on.
On these projects, a lot of them are these big Houdini simulations, and are you finding that's the source of work that's coming your way that you're being asked to do?
Yes, not just that. We at the moment for the project, the big one that I can show you, of course, the dump, we had to take care of many aspects. So we actually not just did the huge simulation, but we also do tons of huge full CG environment extension, CG extension with environment and so on. Then we had tons of simulation, tons of compositing as well. We had to do animation. We had to do like face replacement, so full CG face replacement, and so on. So we are actually focusing on many things. But yeah, the facility were built around FX. So to say, around Houdini, and of course new for compositing. Why? It's because FX overall is the most demanding department in the visual effects industry, because the amount of data that we generate and the amount of, because of the caches and the amount of render that we have is pretty insane. So I mean, in less than 2 years, because that was already 6 months ago, we had to expand our server already to half petabyte, close to half petabyte, and still growing. It's still not enough. So when I'm contacting our IT company, the one that is supporting us, I contacted us, hey, we need to grow more, and they're like, how? Like, why? We are not finding any hard drive anymore on the market for you, like, because that's another big problem at the current time, that the hardest supply are getting less and less. But yeah, we are still the facility. It's really modern in terms of technology on that side. We have a very strong and powerful network to be able to transition those caches around and those huge renders. And this is really, we are literally squeezing those facilities that we have, like lemons in terms of megahertz from those machines. So, but try to keep it as efficient as possible without any waste. So
again, we touched, Filippo, on that growth, and I just want to say congratulations. In that, we kind of touched on it before, but we have been going through a global pandemic, which has, that stopped shooting, and it's rocked the film and media entertainment industry. I mean, how did it help that you already had this big project in? Did you have a constant wave of new projects coming? I mean, how have you been in the last year?
We had constantly projects coming in, smaller projects, bigger projects, like The Stand and others, plus this big dumping movie. So in terms of work, we were always like working. There was not a day that we were not working, because if, let's say, we had less work to do, we still had to develop the pipeline, to work on the facility and so on, since we had to build everything from scratch. So that was a challenge. But also the biggest challenge during the pandemic was the bureaucracy side of opening a company, because of course, when we had to start, basically most of the public offices shut down because of the COVID. So all the public channel, everybody, all the public employees that they were taking care of the bureaucracy, of course, they had to be relocated at home. So everything took way longer than expected, like, to to simply like opening bank accounts or to register like for the garbage tax or whatever, any kind of issues for the office. And so all those problems were dilated and they got just bigger, and they were never going away. And also there were problems with accounting because also they had no idea how to work remotely. And the thing is that we were actually way more efficient than all the other because we built the studio with, having the idea of actually one day to having a lot of people working remotely. So we were, after there was the lockdown, we were already productive the day after. Like there was basically no downtime whatsoever. It was just a switch for us. And so we were not prepared, but everybody else was unprepared. So we were asking questions, we were not getting the answer. So that actually was tricky. But we solved most of the problems. So that went
fine. And you've got the reel to show for it as well.
Yeah.
But I can imagine VFX supervisor, FX artist, to having to open bank accounts and deal with, as you were saying, the garbage tax. Little bit different.
but that's what you do when you open a company. You need to take care of those, because if you don't pay the tax, then you get this fine, and then you cannot do it's
So I have an audience question for you, and it's more creative, less rubbish based. So it is the rocket simulation that looks really complex. What went into making it?
Oh, that was a very interesting project because it was done, of course, with side effects, and because we had to they were developing, of course, the new sparse solver, and they asked us, me and us, to do this this presentation video where we were actually showing the public how this new sparse solver was solving the problem of a complex rocket simulation. So basically that you have just one single container, one single simulation for the type thing. In the past, you had to split up the simulation. Several containers was a huge mess. Still was a very tricky project because, of course, when you start this project for side effects, the tool are still in development. So you don't get to use the final tool for the project. And was tricky, but it was also very interesting to work with them because I could give them suggestions already how to improve the tool while it was still in development during this video making. And it was a very interesting experience to work with side effects. And I have to say, it's a great company, and they have a great team of mathematician and programmer, because they gave me all the support to make this video happen, like with new release of Houdini, technical support for things that were not making sense or not working, and it was a very, very fun project.
I've got another question. They're coming in thick and fast now, Filippo.
Just one more thing. Anyway, the scene for this particular project is available, so anybody can download the Houdini scene that generated this simulation from the Side Effects website.
From the Side Effects website, great. Thank you for that. If people want to get in touch afterwards, I'm sure we can share the link. Share the link to that. So remote working is the topic of the next question. Obviously, we had enforced remote working. How do you see that going forward? We've spoken quite a lot about talent and encouraging them to come back to Italy, and young talent especially. What's your view on that?
There is, it's not a $1 million question, but a $1 billion question, I would say, because to know the answer to that, it's very interesting. To me, it's great in a sense because you can literally work with anybody in the world, with the artists that you need. So you can reach out to them. They don't need to relocate. If they want, they can relocate, of course. But even if you need them, let's say for a short gig for 15 days or 3 weeks, there's no point to relocate. They don't even recover from jet lag if they come from New Zealand, that they had to come back already. So it's kind of important. But they can still work on your project, especially if you need them. So which is great. So, and with the technology nowadays, that's possible. It's actually great, the streaming, you have such tools such as TeraVici, or even the simpler remote desktop of Windows. They did so many improvements on it that it's fully functional at the moment. And the technology to make this happen is actually very easy to implement nowadays, because there are so many firewalls that they provide that and so on. The only problem that remains is actually to work with the artist, because if the artist is a senior artist or it's a skilled artist, then he can work in autonomy. He knows what to do. He doesn't need too much guidance, but you just ask him to do something, and he knows how to reach that level, how to do that. And since we have so many senior artists at the moment in the world, actually that's great, because most of them, like, those are of course self-sufficient. The problem comes when you have junior artists or mid-level artists. Those people, those artists, they still need support. They still need they need to learn the job, and the only way to learn the job is if senior artists teach them how to work. And doing that remotely, of course, is still doable, but it's not very efficient. So here comes the big question, like, yes, of course, we can have all the senior artists working remotely, and then having the junior and mid-level artists working locally. But even if they work here locally, who's going to teach them the work if all the senior artists are away? So you need to have, I think, a good combination of remote artists that, maybe they're not even interested in teaching to other artists. They can just need to do work, so you can have those remotely, and they are very efficient working remotely. But when it comes to more junior artists, you need to have them here in place, and you need to have like senior artists teaching them how to work. Because following tutorial, it's very important in our line of work, but it's not enough, because you need experience on the field to understand certain dynamic and certain workflow, how to deal with them, or even just simply how to deal with the stress. Because if you have a junior artist that have a lot of tasks and doesn't know how to do them, if he has next to him a senior artist that can, don't worry, we will manage. I did this many times, just a matter of patience, we just do it one at a time. It's more comforting than just, being left alone and having like someone on a remote chat say, don't worry, it's fine. It's a human problem, like a human thing.
Yeah, so. No, I agree. I think there is much to be said about working together in a studio, and not just, and for learning purposes and support, but also for that culture and making friends. When when you're first entering an industry, as you've said, a lot of the artists that you've had come to you and your relationships have been super important to be able to build out. And without that, if you're just isolated in your home, working from home, that stops that somewhat. So I have one more question, and we're going to do a countdown for you to answer it in, because we're going to have to move on. But what is the most complex or troubled Houdini shot you have had? And you've got 1 minute. If you go over, I won't penalize you too much to answer it.
The most complex shot, sorry, that I had to do.
Complex Houdini shot you have ever worked on?
Was Independence Day in Trickster. Because we had to do this huge particle simulation and render, and the first time that I did the simulation and I submitted the render on the farm, I switched off the facility literally. And
that's amazing.
I still remember the time, and the viewers were like, what happened? The T guy was like, guys, I submitted the render. As soon as the blade started, all fetching in the cache, like all the artists are screaming like, I cannot work. My mouse is too slow, and everything is just like, ooh.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, then from there, I really learned a lot, because to be able to render those shots, I really had to learn not too much the technique on how to do like a great simulation, a beautiful simulation, but how to handle like a simulation in terms of data, managing the data. And that's the key of effects, that at a certain point, it's not just about creating just a good looking, nice looking shot, but also be able to render it. And so to
Yeah.
manage to do that. And that's why it's very important, the technical aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That was a great story to end on. Thank you so much, Filippo, for joining us.
Thank you for the time.
Hearing your story of being able to go back to their home country and setting up, I think it's one of inspiration, also one of, you know, hope that can do that. And I'm sure lots of people who are setting up on their own as well, who have joined this webinar, have learned a lot off you as well. So thank you so much
Thank you
for that. So that does bring us on to the next webinar, which, as you can see, I hope on your screens, is with OD Studios on August the 11th. You can see some of the huge names that they've been working with. So OD Studios are a full-service boutique visual effects based in Vancouver, one of my favourite cities. They focus on high-end effects and look development work, as well as offering on-set VFX supervision. We're going to have yes, so we're going to look forward to that on August 7th. Please don't miss it. It's going to be another great chat. If you missed it before in Mark's chat, you can sign up either for a free trial, or if you're an existing user of GridMarkets, get 15% off some credits with the promo code 2021 July 7th webinar. You can access this recording if you want to share it with your friends at gridmarkets.com/webinars. Learn more about Oracle at oracle.com/security. And if you have any questions, want to know more, want to get in touch with Filippo, please email support@gridmarkets.com, and I'm sure we can help out. So I think we've done it on time. Thanks so much, Ben, Mark, Filippo. You've been absolutely wonderful. I'm looking forward to August 11th. It's in my diary. I hope it's in yours too. And yeah, I think that's the last slide. I just want to make sure that I have ended on the right slide. It could have been such a smooth ending there, and I've just ruined it. But I think we're good.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Filippo. It was awesome.
Bye, Mark. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye, Filippo.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.